Dear students, welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Shefali Mishra from the Department of Psychology, Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. Today we will examine some of the Indian and global laws related to caste-based criminality. Caste-related crimes are motivated by an intent to intimidate the victim. These are different from the other forms of crime in that the perpetrator is sending a message about the victim and the right to belong to that society. Such crimes send a message to the victim that they are not welcome and they have the effect of denying the victim's right to full participation in society. They also send a message to members of the community sharing the characteristic that they also do not belong and could not equally be a target. This means that caste crimes have consequences which set them apart from other crimes and which justify a different legal approach. Even 70 years after independence, some sections of Indian society, like Dalits and Adivasis, continue to face social discrimination and atrocities across the country. In a survey conducted by the National Council of Applied Economic Research and University of Maryland, US, Indians belonging to virtually every religious and caste groups, including Muslims, Christians, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, admit to practicing untouchability. The findings suggest that India needs to confront the issue of centuries-old dehumanizing caste stigma head-on. Cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment of over 167 million people in India has been justified based on caste. Caste is descent-based and hereditary in nature. In fact, caste in India is perceived as a characteristic associated with birth, having no connection with individual values, beliefs and orientations. As already mentioned, it denotes a traditional system of rigid social stratification into ranked groups defined by descent and occupation. Caste division gets manifested in virtually all spheres of life, whether it is housing, marriage or employment. It is a major determinant of social life in that it decides the general nature of social interactions. These divisions are reinforced through the practice and threat of social ostracism, economic boycotts, and physical violence. The practice of untouchability, the imposition of social disabilities on persons due to their birth in certain caste, is a reality in many parts of the country even today. This practice offers Dalits or so-called untouchables, also referred to as scheduled caste in the Indian Constitution, a life of discrimination, exploitation and violence, including at times even physical tortures. Although the practice has been condemned by many Indian leaders, not much has been achieved with regards to ending the widespread prejudice and crime against certain groups. The learning outcome of the present modules are that the students will be expected to examine and understand the Indian laws against caste-related crime and the global laws against caste-related crime. We will first examine Indian laws against caste-related crime. India is committed to the welfare and development of its people in general and of vulnerable sections of society in particular. The Constitution of India guarantees equality of status and opportunity to all citizens of the country by fundamental rights and other specific provisions. Article 38, 39 and 46 in the Constitution of India stand testimony to the commitment of the state towards its people. The goal of the state is to secure distributive justice and allocation of resources to support programs for social, economic and educational advancement of the weaker sections in general and persons belonging to ST and SC tribes in particular. The Indian Constitution via Article 15 lays down that no citizen shall be subjected to any disability or restriction on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. It also guarantees that every citizen shall have equality of status and opportunity. To deal with the problem of social inequality and class divide in a country like India, with heterogeneous groups and subgroups is well recognized, and steps to resolve these by means of democratic measures like special legislations to deal with acts constituting offences against such weaker sections of the society have been adopted. Scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are two such identified social groups. As per the Article 46 of the Constitution of India, the state is supposed to promote the education and economic upliftment of the weaker section of the society, in particular of SCs and STs, with special care, and shall protect them from injustice and all forms of exploitation. Some major legal enactments. Government has been emphasizing upon the legal rights of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe members of society, and ensured that enactment of the same from time to time to guard their rights in accordance with the laws stated in the Constitution would be ensured. The major legal enactments are as follows. Firstly, the Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955. The second is the Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. The Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955 was enacted in furtherance of Article 17 of the Constitution to abolish untouchability and its practice in any form, in order to prevent and check crimes against individuals belonging to SCs and STs by persons from other communities. The ST-SC Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989 was enacted, which came into force from January 30, 1990. These enactments prescribe penalties that are more stringent than corresponding offences under the Indian Penal Code and other laws. To ensure speedy trial of cases, registered special courts have been established exclusively under these acts, especially in major states of India. Categorization and classification of crime vis-a-vis SC and ST was done recently in 2014. Crime against persons belonging to SCs and STs can be categorized broadly under three heads. Cases of discrimination against SCs and STs members by non-ST-SC members under the Protection of Civil Rights Act 1995. The incidents of atrocities committed against persons belonging to SC and STs by non-SC and ST, that is where Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act has been applied, along with various sections of IPC including murder, rape, grievous hurt, etc., along with the SC POA Act. Then we have cases of crime against the SC and ST where SC-ST Act has not been applied and only sections of IPC have been involved. Apart from the above three major heads, in 2014, data on the under-mentioned have also been collected under crime against STs and SCs. The employment of manual scavengers and construction of dry latrines Prohibition Act 1923, crime against SC/ST women in the revised performer of crime in India. An effort was made to collect more comprehensive data on this aspect by collecting data on newly included crime heads, namely assault on SC/ST women with intent to outrage her modesty, Section 354 IPC, along with further breaking of subsection 354A IPC, that is sexual harassment, Section 354B IPC, assault or use of criminal force to women with intent to disrobe, Section 354C IPC, and Section 354D IPC stalking, insult to modesty of the SC/ST women under Section 509 IPC, along with incidents of such crimes in office, public transport, other places related to works, etc. Now, data on grievous hurt under Section 325, 320, 362A and 326B IPC, only with further subsections grievous hurt, acid attack and attempts to acid attack have been collected. According to the recent data from the National Crime Record Bureau, a national register of all criminal cases in the country, over 47,000 cases of atrocities against the SC were registered in 2014, as against 39,000 cases reported in 2013. Records indicate that maximum number of cases pertaining to crime against SCs and STs were recorded in India's most populous states, Uttar Pradesh, followed by Rajasthan and Bihar. Together, the three states accounted for about half the cases registered in the country in 2013. The account suggests that despite the laws and measures adopted, we have not been successful in this domain. In fact, today the crisis has expanded to unexpected magnitude with serious implications. Resolution of this crisis needs urgent attention from experts and common masses alike. The section below proposes some general recommendations to attain the goal. Some of the recommendations to the Government of India. The Indian government should fully implement the provisions of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989 and the ST-SC Prevention of Atrocities Rules 1995, and in particular it should ascertain committees to oversee state and district level vigilance and monitoring committees are formed as required by Rule 16 and 17 of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Rules 1995. This would help proper implementation of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. Hereinafter, the Atrocities Rules and the Atrocities Act. The effort should ensure that sufficient number of investigators, including appropriate representation of Dalit men and women, are included in the committees to guarantee full implementation of the Act. The government should enlist lawyers, social workers, medical personnel, civil servants and teachers engaged in Dalit issues as investigators given the number of potential cases. Non-government organizations representatives should also be consulted in recruitment of investigators. The government should ensure that state establish special courts in every revenue district and appoint special public prosecutors to try cases arising under the Atrocities Act. It should ensure for stricter implementation of the Atrocities Act to deal with the victims of violent abuse and all other forms of atrocities. Each police station should have a ST-SC atrocities cell to handle investigations of abuses and alleged violations of the Act. Each revenue district should also have a dedicated deputy superintendent of police charged with investigating atrocities under the Act. In keeping with the atrocities rules, police who refuse to register case under the Act should be punished accordingly. For full implementation of the Act, these cells should be statutorily empowered to receive and address complaints of violations under the Act and complaints of official misconduct. They should also be able to file first information reports or FIRs, which is the first step in prosecution of a criminal charge when abuses are committed against Dalits. The cells should work closely with the vigilance and monitoring committees established under the atrocities rules to ensure full enforcement. The government should instruct for immediate and full compensation by the district administration to victims of atrocities as per the atrocities rules. The value of property destroyed and crops damaged should be included in the compensation schedule. The committee appointed by the government under the rules to estimate loss should include NGOs in addition to government officials. The government should provide training to district officials charged with enforcing the Atrocities Act and ensure that a copy of the Act translated into the local language and accompanying rules are easily available and prominently posted in all local level police stations and available in all courts trying cases under the Act. The government should also empower the National Commission for Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes to oversee implementation of the Atrocities Act in all states. Bolster the National Commission for SC and ST both in terms of power, strength and finances, which will enable operation of legal cells opening of branch offices in all states with enough financial resources, and powers to initiate prosecution of cases. As recommended by the Commission, amend Article 338 of the Constitution to empower the Commission to issue directions for corrective actions and implement its findings. Government should strengthen the capacity of the National Human Rights Commission and the National Commission for Women to operate branch offices in all states with enough financial resources and powers to initiate prosecution of cases. Amend the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 so that national and state human rights commissions are not automatically exempted from inquiring into matters already pending before a state commission or any other commission duly constituted under any law. Government should constitute a civilian review board or committee comprising of judges and lawyers to monitor police stations. It should be ensured the Supreme Court guidelines on treatment of persons in custody are strictly enforced. In addition to this, NGO input should also be solicited. Ensure that complaints against law enforcement personnel are promptly and thoroughly investigated by adequately trained investigator staff. The agency should have the power to access documents, summon witnesses, and enter the premises of police stations, lockups, and detention centers to conduct thorough investigations. Adequate female police personnel in police stations consistent with recommendations made by the National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes. The complaints made by women should be recorded by female police officials. Every police station should also have adequate SC and ST personnel and enough financial resources to carry out investigations. Government should also find appropriate implementation of the employment of Manual Scavengers Prohibition Act 1993, and it should be enforced, including prosecution of officials responsible for the perpetuation of the practice and non-rehabilitation of affected scavenger communities, the majority of which are Dalits. The government should ensure that states and districts constitute and oversees vigilance and monitoring committees with adequate representation of NGOs, women, and members of the scavenger communities. State government should also train district officials charged with enforcing the Act. Government should also look at the implement measure designed to ensure that states are in compliance with Article 45 of the Constitution, which mandates free and compulsory education for all children up to the age of 14. Primary education is the first step in breaking the cycle of discrimination and caste-based employment. Government should see relevant legislation for Dalit women and children and into school curricula, including education on the Atrocities Act and the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 should also be incorporated. It should launch a nationwide public awareness campaign regarding the legal prohibition of untouchability, atrocities, and other forms of discrimination and violence against Dalits. This campaign should explain in simple terms what actions are legally prohibited, what resources is available to Dalits and their families, and what are the procedures for filing an FIR. It should also include a program of public service announcements in all states aimed at sensitizing the population on Dalit issues and creating awareness of Dalit rights. Public be made available the government studies on issues affecting Dalits. The white paper on reservation and the white paper on land reform be released. The first outline the extent to which constitutional reservations have been implemented at the state and central level since independence. The second draws attention towards the extent to which Tenancy Act and acts that establish ceilings on single landowners' holdings have been implemented in all states. Particular attention should be given to implementation of reservations in all ministries, in the secretariats of the Prime Minister and President, and in the police and judiciary. 73rd and 74th Amendments to the Indian Constitution provide that in every panchayat, that is village council, and every municipality, seats shall be reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe members in proportion to their representation in the population. Among the seats reserved for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, not less than one-third shall be reserved for women belonging to those castes or tribes. The government should work with intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations to provide appropriate training to elected members of rural and urban bodies, including gender and caste sensitivity training. Women should take part in legal literacy workshop, and all those appointed to reserve panchayat position should be provided legal protection to ensure that they are able to perform their duties. If India has to move ahead to a caste-free nation, the need is for an all-embracing, inclusive, pan-India social movement of social and cultural transformation. Ambedkar showed the way by explaining that political or economic reforms cannot be ascertained without doing away with the caste systems. Global laws in the context of caste and crime. Caste-related crime occur to a greater or lesser extent in all countries of the world. In the Western context, such crimes are referred to as hate crimes. Hate crimes are same as caste-based crimes because of the motivation of the offender. The victim is selected because of his or her membership of a group. This suggests that one member of such a group is treated like any other member, that is, the group in the target, not the individuals. The victims in the case of hate crimes are selected based on their membership to a social group. The idea behind this is to convey the message to reach the intended group of which the victim is a member and just the victim. Attempts to condemn and prohibit the ethnic and racial discrimination have been central to the international human rights laws. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights (ICCPR) as well as the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination (CERD) argue for race discrimination, including race based on ethnicity or national origin, and require them to provide the residents with equal protection of all laws. In addition, Article 4 of the United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of All Forms of Intolerance and of Discrimination based on religion or belief requires state prevention and elimination of discrimination on the grounds of religion as well as take all appropriate measures to combat intolerance on the grounds of religion. CERD requires government to punish by law all acts of violence motivated by racial, ethnic, national origin, animosity. Specifically, CERD Article 4A obliges government to declare all act of violence or incitement to such acts against any race or group of persons of another color or ethnic origin as offences punishable by law. Nevertheless, a question remains under international law of whether bias-motivated violence must be penalized by special legislation or whether it can simply be punished through ordinary criminal laws. Some countries have taken a stand that any violent act with an intention to harm a social group member must be treated under hate crime laws. CERD, however, is silent on this question. Hate crime legislations in United States. Over the past several decades, the persistent problem of bias-motivated violence in the United States has spurred the enactment of hate crime legislation. This legislation either enhances the penalties for crime when it is motivated by bias or make a bias-motivated criminal act a distinct crime in the criminal code. The first law that criminalized bias-motivated violence in the United States was the Federal Hate Crime Statute. This law was created to protect civil rights workers in the 1960s, and it criminalizes all types of bias motivated conduct, where the perpetrator attempts to stop the victim from engaging in one of the 6 designated activities. 1. Enrolling in or attending a public school, participating in a service or facility provided by a state. Third, engaging in employment by any private or state employer. Fourth, serving as a juror. Fifth, traveling in or using a facility of intercaste commerce. And sixth, enjoying the services of certain public establishments. Since the scope of federal hate crime was found to be limited in its use, a broader state hate crime laws came up in 1980s and 1990s. The US Congress passed the hate crime statistics in 1990 in addition to the federal hate crime laws. HCSA published an annual summary of the finding and requires the US Department of Justice to acquire data from law enforcement agencies across the country on crime that manifest prejudice based on race, religion, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. In 1996, Congress enacted the Church Arson Prevention Act of 1996. The act criminalizes any intentional destruction, defacement, or damage to religious property because of the religious character of the property. The act also criminalizes acts that interfere with the enjoyment of a person's free exercise of religious beliefs. Some of the solutions to the problem of caste-based crimes are that the first step to eradicate caste criminality would be eradicating casteism itself. Some specific suggestions, however, would be as follows: providing value-based education to children which can enable them perceive equality of all beings from early years of life and can solve the problem of casteism to some extent. Family, school, and mass media can play a key role in instilling and encouraging a broader outlook among children. This can lead to minimization of discrimination and development of an inclusive perspective. Next, social awareness in rural areas, with the help of creative means like literary programs, etc., must be taken up to minimize the feeling of caste-based discrimination. Encouraging intercaste marriages is a crucial step towards eradication of the feeling of casteism, as these marriages bring two families of different castes closer to each other. This can minimize the negatives of casteism. Emphasis on excluding reference to surnames can also be a crucial step in eliminating caste-based identifications. Similarly, offering provision of cultural and economic equality among different sections of the society reduces the chances of jealousy and competition. Equality with respect to economic and cultural conditions would lead to elimination of casteism. To sum up, we can say that we have learned that the Constitution of India guarantees equality of status and opportunities to all citizens of the country by fundamental rights and other specific provisions. Article 38, 39 and 46 in the Constitution of India reflect the goal of the state towards securing distributive justice and allocation of resources to support programs for social, economic and educational advancement of the weaker sections in general, and so ST and SC in particular. The major legal enactments at the national level include the Protection of Civil Rights Acts of 1955, the Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, and Article 17 of the Constitution to abolish untouchability and its practice in any form. Attempts to condemn and prohibit the ethnic and racial discrimination have been central to the international human rights law too. The International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights (ICCPR), as well as the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, that is CERD, argue for race discrimination and equality. Thank you.